Okay, welcome everybody. Looks like our chair is absent, at least running late, so we're going to go ahead and get started as close to on time as we can. But we'd like to get started with the pledge and a prayer. So if we could have Commissioner Nuttall lead us in the pledge, and then Commissioner Lake give us a prayer.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this day. We're grateful for this opportunity we have to meet as a city and go through tonight's Planning Commission items that are on the agenda. We're grateful for the city staff and their efforts that they put together to detail this, and we're grateful for the citizens that have come out to voice their concerns and opinions, and we're grateful for this beautiful city in which we live in and the freedoms we enjoy in this great country. And we ask thee to bless us to be mindful of others and to take the items on the agenda for what they may be, and we're grateful for all our many blessings, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, commissioners. And thank you, everybody, for being here. We love it when there's a full house. Love participation from the community. The first items are consent items. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussion or independent action. Members of the commission may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion and or for public comment, unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. And I assume the commissioners have had a chance to look over the agenda and have looked at those items. Any discussion on those items?
Yeah, I think there needs to be some discussion on item number 3, the consideration of a request for the home occupation to operate a Montessori preschool.
Yeah, Brian sent a letter out that we all read. Commissioners, I assume you've had the opportunity to read that letter? Right. Okay, any discussion?
Is it better to pull it out and review it as an individual item, or?
Let's do it as an individual item after we do the consent agenda, so just make your motion except for number 3.
Okay, so with that in mind, do I have a motion for those items?
I'll move to approve the consent items 1, 2, 4, and 5 as listed.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Let's move then to the item number 3 and talk about the Montessori preschool.
Okay, so the request is for a preschool at 1226 South Main. This was approved back in 2016. They were doing a morning and an afternoon session with 8 children each. It was approved. They just never started the business back in 2016. So here they are again, because they never started the business. That original approval has expired because they didn't use it, and now we're back and they're requesting the same. They're requesting 2 sessions a day, but in this case they're looking at 18 children per session. There are a couple of things that are, I think, important to discuss. One is the letter or the email that we received. The gentleman, Mr. Corey Bird, and I went back and forth. His point of view was that we should be applying the child care standards in the state administrative rules to this request. His assertion is that the applicant is in fact running a child care provider, but that is not what the applicant has requested. And so the rules specific to child care providers don't apply unless and until they request a child care or act as though, provide a child care services. So if that happens, then those standards will apply, and they're much more stringent than frankly the minimum home occupation standards that we have. I think there are a couple of different things in this particular application that are important to discuss. The applicant has said that they'll fence the front yard with a 4-foot wrought iron fence, and I think that's one of the things that we discussed back in 2016. The fence that they had is an old picket fence, and it's not in fantastic shape. So this will be a much more safe, environment for the kids to play in. Because there are some animals on the property, and because there are, some vehicles and potentially some equipment here and there, it would probably be best if we required the applicant to fence the entirety of the play area for the preschool, with that 4-foot wrought iron fence or the equivalent fence to keep the kids away from the equipment and the animals and things like that. And I think that if we did that, that would probably take care of all of Mr. Bird's, in my view, legitimate concerns, as opposed to the concerns that are probably not relevant for this particular application. The other concern that we have is the 18 children per session. And it's not because 18 children is necessarily problematic. It's the traffic and the parking associated with those 18 kids. 18 kids coming for a 9 o'clock session and then leaving at noon, and then 18 kids coming at 1 and leaving at 3. There's not going to be a whole lot of natural stagger. It's going to be a lot of people dropping off because, a lot of people are kind of last minute folks. The applicant has proposed what I called an optimistic schedule for having kids drop off. I think it would be worthwhile to consider whether that's realistic, or whether we need to, in light of the fact that we have a 6-car rule, which means you can have 6 cars at the property at any one time when you have a business, including the cars owned by the owner. Can they meet that rule, having 18 kids per session? And that rule is intended to, mitigate traffic and mitigate parking concerns. So I think that's probably the things that are worth discussing on this application.
I have a couple questions. What was the reason given that they failed to go forward in 2016?
I would defer to the applicant to
Oh, is the
answer
applicant
that.
here?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Let's talk about it.
Please. No, please come up.
Come up and you have to state your name for the record.
Sure. Tyson Bell, thanks. We didn't move forward. I guess we were a little bit blindsided by our neighbor's huge letter, and we felt like, whoa, like a lot of it was irrelevant, or just we felt like it was twisted, and then we didn't have the money for the fence at the time, and so we just planned on fencing the whole property at the time, until we could do that. So we got our surveys, and so that's the main reason that we didn't move forward at the time.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do we have any other questions for the applicant while he's right
Yeah,
here?
so about the fence, so
Sure.
is it my understanding that the fence is now there, like completely?
So we just wanted to fence the whole property. One of the things that Brian mentioned, we actually want, like, part of our Montessori is about real learning, about real life, both the most rigorous academic, scientifically, and also real learning, like learning how to feed animals and take care of animals and cook and, just do basic developmental things. So we don't want them to be walled off from the animals, because when we go out for recess, we'll feed the chickens and we'll brush the horse because we have a little pony. And that's what's exciting about Montessori, is you can actually learn and get in there with the farm animals and enjoy. And so we just wanted to make sure the whole fence was, the whole property was fenced appropriately so that everything was secure. And it was more Brother Bird's equipment. Corey said, oh, I have equipment right there. So we fenced his portion off, and we're not going to have any equipment. I mean, shovels, we'll have shovels outside, but we won't have any like saws or anything. We won't have any equipment outside that will be, dangerous or anything. So,
Is the horse free range in the yard, or? how
oh
does-
no,
how
it's
does
just,
it
it's in the
maintain?
corral. We have a chicken coop and then a corral with 2 sheep and a pony.
Okay.
That's pretty much, a couple cats, just a small farm. Nice. We got some kids that enjoy doing the farm work, and so we just want to bring some more kids and enjoy that experience together and share that with the community.
Okay, great.
So-
And what's the age group of the kids that come to this?
Montessori, we'll usually just do preschool age, and then sometimes there's someone that's homeschooling that says, oh, I want my child to come, and they might be 6, or, just younger usually. It's just because everyone's in school usually, but sometimes because of COVID, it's changed. Sometimes people are like, oh, I've got a 7-year-old, and I'd love them to be part of your. So we're prepared educationally and equipped, in terms of all the materials to teach up to, 6th grade or 7th grade. But it's unlikely that, it's more just younger kids. It's a younger group. So,
That's your target.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Thank you.
my pleasure.
I have one question for you, sorry. As part of the home occupation requirements, it states that no more than 25% of the structure or 500 square feet can be used for this preschool.
Correct.
What size area do you have for 18 kids and still meeting that?
Yeah,
those
it's a
guidelines?
good question. So, yeah, we just want to follow and I called around to every preschool in Mapleton, and I threw 18 just because I prefer not to limit. I don't think we'll probably get 8. I mean, 18 is a lot of children, but one of the schools already has 18 that's filled, and another has 16, and then some decide to go small. So I just put 18 because that's kind of what I've seen around that's already been approved. So that's why I was just kind of going status quo, I guess, because it's like, okay. And I knew that the driving schedule, I could, be very strict with my parents, because we've operated a school in Provo for 1.5 years and in Springville, and now we're moving it to Mapleton. So we've done this, and we've had certain requirements, and we've always met them. And we just tell the parents, here's you have to drop them off at 9:10 and not 9, because we just want to make sure the traffic is, and it's always worked out really well. Parents are very responsive. We just tell them, the school is based on this requirement. If we break it, we can't have the school. And so they're always like, okay, we'll do it. So that was our thought in doing it.
Anything else? We'll wait till he turns around and starts walking back. Sorry.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I mean, let's do it.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other thoughts?
Brian, have we ever put limits on the size of these schools in the past?
I don't know that we've specifically said a number. Usually what they've done is they've come and they've requested 8 or even 10. I don't believe that we've ever had anyone request 18. I'd have to go back and check, but I don't recall having anyone in an in-home thing like this, whether it be a child care or a preschool. I don't recall anyone requesting more than 8 or 10. I could be mistaken. I'm not certain that that's true. What we've done, and I don't think we've put a cap in the specific conditions. We just responded to the application of 8 or 10 or whatever the number was.
The city has an ordinance for how many individuals you can have per square foot, right?
Well, it doesn't.
Commercial standards, it would.
Yeah, in the commercial standards you would, and there's probably something having to do with residential, but it has to do with.
There is one in residential that came up once.
I think though
I can't remember what it is.
I think it was the Broadbent that you're probably thinking of, but that's for overnight occupancy, like a hotel or something, that kind of occupancy, as opposed to this, which is, I'd have to check, but I don't know that there's anything like that.
Well, this would be still considered some sort of occupancy classification, where if you have 18 people, those 18 people can't be in a room smaller than X amount of square footage.
Could be true, and we can check into that if you're.
Fire code reasons for occupancy, then you have restrooms and plumbing accessibility and all that stuff that tie to it, so.
Yeah.
Would this be considered a conditional use?
It would.
So it would be reviewed after a year?
It wouldn't necessarily be reviewed unless you requested that it be reviewed. And so we could bring it back in a year to see how it's working out, or 6 months, or We could put fewer restrictions on it now and revisit it later, or put more and revisit maybe loosening them later if it seems to be working out. I mean, as long as we have a good reason for doing it based on the standards and our concern about, you know, potentially legitimately not meeting one of the standards for home occupations.
That's my only concern.
I think that Jake brings up a good point, and I'm inclined to agree that I'm inclined to move for approval, but with the stipulation that we revisit this in 6 months and see how many students there are and how it's working out, and revisit it then.
6 months?
Yes. Unless somebody else feels differently.
It seems like a good amount of time, at least initially.
So with that in mind, I guess I could make the motion. I would move that the consideration of a request for a home occupation to operate a Montessori preschool at 1226 South Main Street in the A2 zone be approved with the condition that we revisit it in 6 months to assess the number of students and the safety of the property.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 6. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what we have is a request for a variance to decrease the side corner yard setback from the typical 30 feet to 20 feet for a lot located at 415 South, 1200 West. So when the new middle school was being proposed, the school district put in 400 South, a portion of 400 South that was not already in existence, which frankly was most of it. And they built a full width road all the way through from 1200 West to 1600 West. This parcel that you can see in front of you was a parcel owned by somebody other than the school district that the road went through. And you can see it kind of left with the red line. You can kind of see it left a small-ish compared to some of the other lots that are south of it, parcel that then became a lot in Lot 13 in the Larson Lane subdivision. This area, when it was developed, became zoned RA1 with the TDR overlay, which means that under the standards applicable at the time, it required a half an acre of land, and under the standards that were applicable then and applicable now, 100 feet of minimum width. The subject lot is only 0.7 acres, which is plenty sufficient for a lot in that zone, and also it's 102 feet wide. So it meets the minimum width and the minimum area requirements. On our corner lots, we require a 30-foot setback from both street frontages so that the house isn't up on the street on either one of the roads. We require a 10-foot and a 25 rear foot setback on a corner lot. But one of the keys to a corner lot is that the 25-foot rear setback does not have to be opposite the front door. So you can choose which one is going to be your rear. On this particular lot, a home facing 1200 West would have a building envelope that would measure 62 feet wide if it faced 1200 West and over 200 feet deep east to west. The applicants have said that they're struggling to find a home plan that they like that fits the building envelope. So the applicant has requested a variance to the required 30-foot setback to reduce the required setback to 20 feet.
Along 400?
Well, yes, so it would be on 400 South, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So this is the state code for variance standards. Sean, in the staff report, he sent you the city code, which is, both of them are applicable. The state code goes a little bit further, but but it is applicable to all variances. And there are 5 criteria in the state code, and all 5 of those criteria must be met. And the same is true of city code. This just gets into a little bit more detail and depth than the city code does, in order to grant a variance. So the hardship standard, the first standard is the hardship standard. There has to be a hardship, and that hardship can't be self-imposed or economic in nature. So in this case, the 30-foot setback, does that 30-foot setback from 1200 west and 400, does it create an unreasonable hardship, given that this lot meets the minimum width in this zone? We would suggest no, that there is no unreasonable hardship. It may not fit every house on this lot, but there are certainly some very substantial houses that will fit on this. The question is, can a reasonable home fit on that? The fact that many homes can be built on this lot, even if not every single home or the home that the applicant wants, would make it a hardship, a self-imposed hardship, if indeed there were a hardship. The applicant could choose a compliant home, a compliant floor plan. The second are there special circumstances specific to this lot that are not widely available in the area. And in this case, the answer is yeah, there kind of are. In this area, the next narrowest lot is 107 feet wide, and the average lot is 148 feet wide. So this lot is about 40 plus feet narrower than the average lot. So in this case, we would agree, yeah, it is a little bit of a special circumstance. Maybe not a hardship, but it is a special circumstance. Is a substantial property right being denied? If the circumstances were such that no home could be built on the lot, yeah, absolutely, it would be a substantial property right. Is the fact that not every house could be built on this lot the loss of a substantial property right? No, frankly, no. The fact that you can put a reasonable home on this lot, even though it may not be the home the applicants want, is they still are able to exercise their property right. Contrary to public interest, there's no specific public interest damaged by this. There's just the idea that if you grant unjustifiable variances, if a city were to make a habit of granting unjustified variances, then your zoning ordinances kind of become, your setbacks and things like that kind of become, they kind of become questionable. They lose their force of law as a practical matter, if not a legal one. This is the spirit of the ordinance upheld by granting a variance. The zoning standards provide for predictability and consistency with new development, so that a person who owns a home on a road and a new home comes in, they know that that this new home won't be any closer to the road than 30 feet on both sides. That's something that people care about, and the zoning ordinance is there to create standards. So given that this lot does meet the area and the width requirements, granting a variance in this case would probably not be consistent with the spirit of the land ordinance. So with that said, again, all 5 criteria have to be met. In our view, the applicant fails on 3 criteria. There's no unreasonable, non-self-imposed hardship. The property right to build a home is not denied, and the spirit of the ordinance is not met when the lot meets the standards of the zone. And so the staff would recommend denying the variance request. Are there any questions?
Have we ever had a similar request? I don't recall anything like this coming across.
I don't recall anything like this. The nearest thing we had was, And it's in TJ's neighborhood. It might even be TJ's house, I'm not sure. I don't think it is, because you live on 400 and it's not 600, right? The people who live on 600, maybe I'm just got my area of town, but anyway, there was a lot that was an interior lot, and then the city allowed a road to be built next to it that made it a corner lot. And we granted a very minor variance of, I think, 2 feet, so that they could do an addition to an existing home, where previously that addition would have been a no-brainer because it was an interior lot previously. Now it's a corner lot. That's the only one I can think of that would be
That was in
similar.
my old neighborhood, the Murdoch's home, and
Yeah,
yeah, the road, prior to the road going in, I think they got permission. I don't,
yeah, I think that was one of the facts of the case, is that they had permission previously, didn't act on it, and then we're coming back. I'm trying, it's hard to remember all the facts of the case he did 2-3 years ago.
yeah, that one was.
Historically, how long has the applicant owned this lot?
I'm not certain they do own it yet.
Oh, they're just
They may or may, I don't know. Up until, I think this plat recorded probably within the last 3 or 4 months.
Okay. So they're doing due diligence to see if it's feasible.
I assume so. I'm not certain of that, but I assume so.
Is the applicant here? Okay. Do we have any questions? Any other questions?
Not really for staff, no. Not for Ryan.
Is this a public hearing item?
It is not a public hearing item. It is a public meeting, and it's kind of, it's up to you whether you want to take public comment or comments from the applicant or
Yeah,
not.
let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
No? Okay. I state my name.
Please.
Christina Curtis and Brady Curtis. I'm not a speaker, so please forgive me. And I'm so this plot means a lot to us, and getting our family on it, it's just, so thank you for letting me be able to speak. And, and I wrote my thoughts down. Is that okay?
That's great.
I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
Just relax.
Okay.
We're all among friends
I'm so grateful
here.
that they left, so I'm like, less people. Okay, and this is my first city planning meeting, so anyways, okay, so yes, we appreciate the consideration the staff has made in this matter. However, based on some of the same points that the staff has shared, we believe a different conclusion has been warranted. And again, thank you for letting me speak. As stated in the review, the primary question is whether the setback requirements, particularly the 30-foot setback from both 1200 West and 400 South, create an unreasonable hardship. State code indicates that a hardship must come from unique circumstances peculiar to the property. So first can we just address the unique circumstances peculiar to this property, because this discussion is supported by facts and not opinions. I have these little bulletin points. I don't know how this is.
No, this is great.
Okay.
People bring those all the time, so that's fine.
Nice little figures on the back. Sorry, I'm shaking.
Thank you.
Okay. So uniqueness of the property. By their own statement in the review, the staff recognized that Lot 13 is the most narrow corner lot in the area. Lot 13 does not have a parking strip on the north because of how the setbacks must be measured when there is not a parking strip. We would only be able to build a house of 62 feet within the current setbacks. The narrowest lot the narrowest lot that the staff reviewed in the area is 107 feet, which we discussed, but it has a parking strip, allowing for a home that is 80 feet wide. While that lot is only 5 feet wider than the Lot 13, it allows for an 18-foot wider home. And then when comparing Lot 13 to property in the immediate area, the property to the north has a parking strip, as well as the west side and the property on the west side of the property and the property on the west side of 400 South, where the middle school is located. We know that the developer had little control over the size and configuration of the lot due to the construction of 400 South, even though the subdivision ordinance encourages wider corner lots than the minimum. Lot 13 is 46 feet narrower than the average width within, which is 148 feet. I'm sorry, my brain. Lot 13 is 46 feet narrower than the average width, which is 148 feet for corner lots in this area. The fact that Lot 13 is 102 feet wide, it's only 2 feet wider than the minimum, compounded by the lack of a parking strip, makes this property very unique and peculiar, as well as very difficult to build a house on, comparable to those in the area. And hardship. This discussion can be a bit harder because unreasonable hardship is subjective and depends on the perspective and bias of those making decisions rather than facts. The cost of an architect averages $15,000 to $80,000 plus for a custom design. Especially in this market, this could definitely be considered an unreasonable hardship when other lot owners are allowed to choose whether or not they hire a competent architect, especially considering the fact that our builder already has a plan for our dream home, which would fit on the lot with a 20-foot setback on the north side of the property. With the variance, we could build our dream home. Our bias could be that without the variance, we are facing an unreasonable hardship because we would be forfeiting a constitutional right of the pursuit of happiness by being forced to settle on a different style for our home. The staff even agrees that it may be more challenging to design a home on this lot than on other comparably sized lots in the zone. More challenging could technically be considered an unreasonable hardship. For all the other corner lots reviewed by the staff, dealing with the hardship of a 30-foot setback is reasonable when the lot averages 148 feet wide. An unreasonable hardship is being the only lot having to work with a 30-foot setback while dealing with no parking strip and barely meeting the 100-foot minimum. In addition, the additional point addressed in the review was predictability and consistency with new construction. With the house facing 1200 West, the setback would align with the house to the south, which faces the same direction. The house to the east faces east with a wider lot, and nearly 2 acres would separate the two houses. So allowing this variance would not be an issue with the alignment of the house to the east. With the surrounding houses measuring 81 and 106 feet wide, consistency with the new construction would best be maintained by allowing this variance. The staff states that we would have approximately 62 feet of width within the setbacks. That would be 19 feet more narrower than the narrowest surrounding house. In conclusion, the property is indeed unique and peculiar, and without this variance, its uniqueness would result in considerable extra time, stress, and money to design a satisfactory home instead of our ability to build our dream home, thus qualifying it as an unreasonable hardship. Granting this variance is necessary so we can build a house with comparable square footage and aesthetics for this beautiful neighborhood. I'd like to review the staff's response to Standard 4 from MCC 18.84.360. Quote, staff has not identified any reason for why the proposed variance would substantially affect the general plan or be contrary to the public interest. We agree that the staff's response to the Standard 4, that granting this variance results in nothing contrary to the general plan or anything contrary to public interest. We submit the approval of this variance is beneficial to, to all involved, and voting in our favor of this request would most assuredly alleviate the unreasonable hardship caused by the unique and peculiar circumstances to this property. We love this area and feel our little families, I should not be talking. Our little family's values and standards align with those good citizens of Mapleton, and therefore we ask for your consideration in approving this variance.
I have a question for you.
Yes,
So the variance you're asking for is on 1200 or 400?
on 1200.
On 1200. Which way would the house face?
Hold on, let me look.
The house would face towards
Yeah, 1,200. So the house
Where would the garage be?
on 1,200.
So the reasoning behind a 30-foot or setback, or even a 20-foot, if the city allows you to put a 20-foot setback, there's a 5-foot sidewalk, correct? So that leaves,
So the 5-foot sidewalk is not factored in.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so
Not
sorry.
part
It's
of the
400 south. I'm
it's
so
not part
sorry.
of the lot. So the top back of curb to the front of the house is 20 feet
So
if the
your-
variance is
Your house
approved.
would face
So the
400
property
south?
line is at the back of the sidewalk.
The
1,200.
back of the sidewalk on this property.
Having to put the garage in.
Okay, so they would still meet the 20-foot requirements for a car to be parked in the driveway without protruding into the sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I told you wrong. The house would be facing 1,200 west, and then the garage would be on 400 south. Is that what you're?
Garage, so the reasoning behind the setbacks and for garages is mainly so that a car, when it's parked in the driveway, if it's less than the 20 feet, the back of the car protrudes into the sidewalk, thus creating an obstruction for kids riding up and down the sidewalks, hitting the back of it.
Okay.
So there's some reasoning behind the setbacks. That was one of my thoughts, but if it's,
So if the house is gonna face 1,200, well, if,
front door faces 1,200, the garage is off of
so the
400.
garage off of 400, or, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so the garage, so wait a minute. The house faces 1,200,
1,200.
so the house faces west. Okay,
But the garage faces north.
so in this zone, it would need to be 25 feet
It'd be 25 feet
from the back of sidewalk for the garage.
for the garage,
Yeah.
and they don't have that. They're asking for that to be reduced to 20.
Well, that and the 30-foot setback.
Because
So,
the
I
front
mean,
and the
they're-
side have to be the
Well,
same
they'd
per
be
the,
both, I mean, they'd need a variance to both, I suppose.
you're not,
The
you're not
front
asking for the front
program-
and the side, you're just asking for one, the front,
The-
The side.
the side.
So the
400 south.
The real issue that we're having is that it doesn't have a parking strip, and so where we're having to measure it, so that was kind of the point, is where we're having to measure it is hugely, like, taking from the, I don't know how to explain it.
So it's basically the 10 feet. Well, it'd be more. If there was a parking strip, you could measure from the back of the curb to the end of the sidewalk.
So in this case, Brian, it's measured from the back of the sidewalk
Correct.
to the front of the garage. The standard right now is 30 feet.
And
The standard from the property line is 30 feet, yes.
30 feet from the property line, on this case, is the sidewalk.
Back of
not-
sidewalk,
Not
yeah.
that back of curb.
That's right.
So granting us a variance would still allow them to park a vehicle without obstructing, but it doesn't meet,
It doesn't meet
The
the
other criteria.
standard of this zone,
Right.
but yeah, it would meet the standard in other zones for,
Well, I
for
think-
20 feet.
I mean, we'd be fine with the garage being, what, 30 feet setback, but just the house, the design of the house.
That may be a viable workaround.
you mean the 30 feet
My
from the
question,
house from the front?
From
my,
the
my
side.
question is,
We'd
do you,
have
do you
garage.
currently own the lot, or is this just part of due diligence?
Part of due diligence.
Okay, so you haven't purchased the lot yet? Okay.
If you were to flip your house design around so that it faced 400, would it fit in that lot without any variance?
did a direct mirror and flipped at 180.
It would be, you would have, well, it might fit. I don't know how deep that lot is, or how deep the house is. But you would be right on your backyard would be right on the neighbor.
On 10 foot, on your
Yeah.
10 foot.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have lots of side yard, it'd be great, but not too many people use their side yard.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant?
No, thank you for doing this.
Sorry.
It's very helpful, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, discussion on this item.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one because,
The variance rules are pretty strict from the state and the city. And if we open this, does it open Pandora's box for future claims?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if there's a standard for variances, and if you meet the standard, then you should get it, and if you don't, you shouldn't, and that's kind of you know, that is the standard, you know, it doesn't, I wouldn't say there's a precedent necessarily, other than if you get in the habit of granting variances that don't meet the standards, then your standards become less important, less, you know, they become suggestions rather than rules.
Can you go back up to the first standard?
Yeah, it's pretty, it's pretty small, because the whole, actually, maybe, it
It's,
doesn't really
yeah,
make it
that was
better.
it, may not find unreasonable hardship if the hardship is
If it's
self-imposed
economic
or economic.
or self-imposed. So an architect being expensive is an economic reason, and, you know, this is our dream house as a self-imposed reason.
And if it would fit the other direction.
If it would fit in that direction, if it would fit on another lot, I mean, if another house would fit on this lot,
That's my hang up.
in my view, a variance is intended for situations where there just is no other recourse. When people come and they mention variances, what I tell them is this, you know, if you had a standard lot and the Jordan River washed away half your lot, and now all of a sudden we're asking you to fit, you know, on what was a standard lot, you know, asking you to now meet the setbacks, you know, the fact that the Jordan River washed away half of the lot that you had owned is not your problem. That you're going into a lot that you know is already narrow with a house in mind that doesn't fit.
When this subdivision was planned out, it was always understood that 400 would go through there, right? So it was known before.
Yeah, and in fact, 400, realistically, 400 preceded this subdivision in a lot of ways.
So when this subdivision was designed, it was understood that this lot
Yeah.
would be this small.
When this subdivision was being reviewed, 400 South was probably already under construction. Yeah.
Sure. One more thing.
If there's another idea, maybe not necessarily 10 feet, but something else, like just a little leeway, because there's no parking strip on that road, and that's what's making it difficult, is this lot is being compared to corner lots that don't compare to it at all. It's very unique and different, and because it's so narrow and there isn't a parking strip, it just makes it tricky. Like, the home that we really want is a home that would not have the garage on the side, but we love this area, and we, you know, it's just, and it is, it's mountains and the views. Anyways, I mean,
Brian, do the other corner lots in the subdivision have parking strips on both sides?
On the ones that border on 400 South, no. I don't. I think yes on the interior streets in that area for the most part, if not entirely. In these areas that are a little bit older, it was a little bit more hit and miss, and I'm not certain about it. But I think at least in the adjacent subdivision, the answer is yes, they do have a park strip. And, you know, and
So this lot is unique in that it doesn't have.
it is, yeah, and we agree that the applicant meets at least 2 of the criteria. It is unique, but do they meet all 5 is the question.
Here's my personal thoughts, I guess, take it for what you may for the discussion. Just going through the applicant's list here. As far as the uniqueness of the property and the width, the 62 feet wide, one of my side businesses, I'm a home designer, so 62 feet wide doesn't scare me. I just did a quick internet search. There's a lot of homes that fit within that. So I'm not trying to say your dream home won't and can't be modified. I think there's some leeway to that. So where that uniqueness of the property with the width, I don't feel is a reason to grant a hardship in this instance. With all due respect, I love your presentation, and I think being able to build your dream home in Mapleton would be awesome. As far as the cost being a hardship, I've designed a 16,000 square foot home and I never was paid that much, so I'm in the wrong line of business. So the cost, I think, is something to consider, but it shouldn't be considered as far as a hardship for granting your variance. And then the consistencies, I think there's so much inconsistencies within Mapleton with park strips and no park strips and setbacks that has some room to, I guess, be negotiated there. So the first two, unfortunately, I don't agree with, but with all due respect, I hope there's another way you could find a different house plan or tweak this existing house plan or mirror it or flip it or 180 if you need some help. I'm not offering my services because I probably can't do that, but there's many home designers I can refer you to that could make a tweak to this plan and do it really inexpensively, so.
You have a motion? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tend to agree with many of the things that Jake said. It's tough because I mean, I would agree that there's ways to make it work. So.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to accept staff's recommendation to deny the variance.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. I hope everything works out for you. All right, guys.
Is that the last item?
That's the last item. That's it? Okay. I move that we adjourn.
Thanks, Rich.
Second.